Hello, Morongo Basin and listeners around the world online at Z107.7fm.com. This is your Z107.7 local news for Sunday, December 7th, 2025. If you're wondering what's going on at the United States Marine Corps proposed expansion of the special use airspace in the Morongo Basin, we have a few updates. Here's a quick refresher. In the fall of this year, the Marine Corps proposed a permanent special use airspace above the 29 Palms Marine Corps Air Ground Combat Center and the areas adjacent to it, namely most of the Morongo Basin and the Johnson Valley OHV area. The project website says the expansion would support current and future training activities for 365 days a year. It also says there would be no change to the public's access to the Johnson Valley shared use area, but it also says that because of the permanent nature of the special use airspace, you may have to get the Marines' permission to now use parts of that expanded airspace. The release of the proposal had off-road groups, amateur aviators, and residents concerned that that would mean more access for the military while simultaneously shrinking the available airspace. The nonprofit organization Blue Ribbon Coalition released an initial response in late August saying that the restrictions would harm off-roading activities in Johnson Valley like the King of the Hammers. They say that medevac flights and other essential emergency responses could be impacted, thus limiting the off-road event. The Blue Ribbon Coalition describes themselves as a national group that fights to preserve recreation access to America's public lands. There is a public comment period and a timeline given by the Marine Corps, and then a waiting period where info fell dark during the federal government shutdown. The Marine Corps did release 2 fact sheets about the proposal, which also included 2 alternatives to the permanent year-round expansion. In those fact sheets, the Marine Corps say that the recreation activities and events would not be impacted, and drone usage and low-flying aircraft can continue as it does today without permission or authorization required from the Marines. It also states that emergency medevac flights would remain prioritized and protected. The Blue Ribbon Coalition said in a statement released in mid-November that they appreciate the Marines' willingness to share information with the public and that they're approaching the conversation with respect for their role, but they respectfully disagree with some of the items on the fact sheets which don't line up with the draft environmental assessment released by the Marines. Z107.7 contacted Captain Jonathan Huizar, who's the Director of Communication Strategy and Operations for the Marine Corps Air Ground Combat Center. He says that the Combat Center is grateful for the public comments and that they're confident that the final environmental assessment will provide clarity to stakeholders in the area. That final assessment is expected in winter of 2026. He also says that that final assessment doesn't actually establish the airspace. That's ultimately up to the Federal Aviation Administration, or the FAA, which has the sole authority to make formal decision on the airspace proposal. That decision could take as long as an additional 7 months from the final environmental assessment. While the initial public comment period ended in September, there are still additional ways for the public to voice their concerns. As part of the FAA's review process, the government organization will publish a Notice of Proposed Rulemaking, or NPRM, which will allow the public to submit comments during that process. Until then, it's business as usual in the airspace around the high desert. We'll keep an eye on the long process of the proposed expansion and keep you informed on what's happening in the skies and on the ground of the Morongo Basin. We will have links to everything mentioned in this story on our website, Z107.7fm.com. Reporting for Z107.7 News, I'm Robert Hayden.